Alrighty. So we're sitting down for another, I guess, like TV show review. This one's going to be about the next 4 episodes of Yu Yu Hakusho that I've watched. And, there's not really a lot to get into other than just the fact that now we're ready to talk about episodes 5 through 8. And essentially where we left off is Yusuke actually gets to come back to life, and he successfully did so after Keiko was able to make it in time. And now we're experiencing kind of our first day where Yusuke is back alive and kind of roaming the streets again. And this episode number 5, was kind of fun. It was only, essentially used to kind of tee up what the rest of the show will be like with him as a spirit detective. So he's kind of walking around trying to take the sights in again, experiencing being alive again. And Botan tries to give him his sort of first spirit detective mission by cosplaying as this crystal ball lady on the side of the road, but Yusuke just completely blows her off, not realizing that it's her. But through the course of him going throughout his day, he sees that there are these middle schoolers from a rival school that are trying to take over their territory, and for some reason they have Kuwabara and all his homies in a predicament where they're doing everything they ask him to do. And what we find out is that they've kidnapped Kuwabara's kitten, and so he's doing everything he can to comply to get his kitten back without it being injured, which is kind of funny and sweet. But what we also find out is that Yusuke is not the same person he was before, in the way that one of the leaders of the high school or not high school, but the other middle school that's trying to take over their territory, Yusuke kind of sees him with devil horns on, and he doesn't exactly know why yet. But throughout the course of the story, just to help Kuwabara out, he essentially reaches to the point where he reveals himself to everybody as alive again, because all these bullies are like, oh well, if Urameshi was still alive, that would be a real problem, but he's not. So but he is. So then he does one of those cool fun anime reveals where he's like, I've come back from hell just to beat you guys up. And he beats him up, and the kitten goes back to where it needs to be in Kuwabara's hands. And then Yusuke chases down the leader of the gang, and what we discover is that he had been possessed by some little demon spirit, and Yusuke can not only see the spirit, but he catches it and captures it, and that's where Botan kind of reappears again and says, oh, I didn't even get to tell you what the mission was, but by the way, you're the spirit detective and I'm your assistant now, and you just caught your first bad spirit. And obviously Koenma comes in to kind of explain things a little bit too. All in all, that episode was just kind of cute, funny, whatever, just kind of laying the groundwork for what would come next. And then in the next 3 episodes, we go through the saga of one of Yusuke's first big cases, where he's trying to track down these 3 individuals who have stolen 3 spiritual items. And it is Goki, who is somebody who consumes human spirits to power himself up. Kurama, who we don't know much about, but he stole a mirror that apparently can grant a wish when there's a full moon. And then Hiei, which apparently stole the Sword of Subjugation, which allows him to turn any human into a yokai if they've been cut by it. These episodes weren't too bad. I mean, obviously it's kind of creepy that this Goki dude, the item that he stole, is especially good at stealing children's souls. And so all these children are passing out around the city because he's eating their souls. And Yusuke essentially goes to fight him and gets dusted the first time. And then now using his spirit gun technique, which, like we kind of alluded to before, he now has his spirit gun technique where he essentially can, one time a day, shoot an enemy with spirit energy from his fingertip. And then he later gets an item that allows him to kind of amplify this power, and he's able to use it against that same enemy. And so, as things kind of go, he's able to defeat the kid that's eating human souls. And the reason why I'm basically just going through the plot is that both of these episodes didn't really have anything interesting to speak of as far as moving anything forward. other than there was also something that occurred where the teachers were so pissed that Yusuke was back at school that he stole all this stuff from students' desks and he tried to pin it on Yusuke, but he was able to use a magical item that was given to him by Koenma and Botan to basically see that the teacher that was accusing him had stolen the items and they were all in his pocket. Just kind of goes to show you that the teachers at his school still hate him and they're still kind of corrupt, other than that principal. But really nothing super interesting to talk about happened during those episodes, other than that they were good episodes and, move the plot forward. But then we get into kind of an introduction of Kurama and Hiei. And Kurama's episode, you get the feeling that not only because that he sort of had a falling out with the other two individuals that stole items and escaped from prison, but Kurama essentially didn't really have any hostile intent to him, and we later find out that the reason why he stole this item was he wants to make a wish, even if it is to kill himself to get the wish, to save his human mother's life. And the reason why I say human mother is we find out that Kurama is actually a yokai as well, just like everybody else, so basically a spirit. But he was a spirit of like the nine-tailed fox, which is interesting because, if you watch Naruto, like the nine-tailed fox is named Kurama and stuff like that. But he had lived a life of stealing items from humans and thievery and stuff like that. And then he was sentenced to jail and, not necessarily sentenced to jail. He was injured by a hunter pretty severely. So he chose to send his spirit basically into this human couple where they had him as a child. And now his whole life, he knew that he was actually this spirit and that he had been born as this child and that he would get his powers back when he turned 10. But his family had no idea, and he grew up looking like a normal human. And this is kind of the first thing that I wanted to get into, just talking about, I just think that's so interesting to think of a story where this like spiritual or godlike being is almost reincarnated in the form of a human on purpose, and they know about it the whole time and they just keep it a secret because they want to live a normal life. I think that would be such an interesting concept for some other fictional work to explore. Like, could you imagine if you're watching a show and some supporting character in a time of great need all of a sudden was able to step up to the plate and sacrifice themselves or perform some sort of crazy godlike ability, because the entire time in the story that you've been traveling with them, they've been hiding this part of their identity from you. I just think that would be such a cool concept for a character, and it is a very cool concept in the show, even though the show doesn't necessarily use it in that way. But we get a very cool moment from Yusuke where Kurama actually activates the item and decides to give up his life to save his mom. But Yusuke actually decides to also give up his life, hopefully that saves Kurama, because having witnessed his own mother cry at his own death, even though how poorly she treats him, he couldn't imagine or he couldn't think of anything more annoying than to witness than the sadness of Kurama's mother knowing that he passed away and she's still alive. And so I thought that was super interesting, and just like any good anime, because he decided to do that, the person on the other end of the item decided to grant the wish without taking anybody's life. So it ended up being a good wrap up and kind of a heartwarming story in a way. And it leads into this, if you've been watching the opening of the show, you know that Kurama and Hiei become a part of the group somehow. And so this kind of makes sense in the way of like Kurama's really actually not a bad guy, and he just needed to use it for this purpose, even if it was going to sacrifice himself. Then the next episode, we have to deal with Hiei. And Hiei has the ability to mind control multiple humans all at once, like puppets, and use them for his will because he has the evil eye, third eye. And he steals Keiko in order to hold her hostage against Yusuke to sort of, be able to gain access to all three of these spiritual items. And it's super interesting because with how determinate Hiei is speaking about wanting to take over the spirit realm and subjugate all these humans, it's really interesting that I personally forget how he becomes sort of a good guy. So we'll see how that happens. I know I've seen those episodes, but I just don't remember what happens. But regardless, we have a pretty suspenseful episode where Yusuke is fighting Hiei, but we also get our first intro into kind of Yusuke's plot armor sort of power, where Hiei is supposed to be much stronger than him, but every time in this battle, Yusuke survives by the skin of his teeth, by somebody helping him out or something like that. His spiritual energy almost multiplies. And so Hiei says that kind of makes him one of the most troublesome type of humans to deal with and the most hated. But what I think this is pointing to is sort of the idea that one's strength of will or character would influence their spiritual aura. And I think that we can or there's also like natural talent as well in Yusuke that Koenma was talking about. And thinking about the other works that this same creator, Togashi, has made, his other anime that he's made is another very critically acclaimed anime, being Hunter x Hunter, or Hunter x Hunter, if you say it that way. And in that show, aura in and of itself is basically the power system, and there are many different things that can affect how you use this aura or how it's displayed in the show and things like that. I'm not going to get into that. That's for if I ever watch that show as a part of this channel, but that would be like my third time watching it, so I think I'll wait. But that being said, it just sets an interesting bookmark to say, hey, Yusuke must have some sort of natural potential that allows him to actually compete with these people on a level playing field, or at least persevere past any sort of roadblocks he may have. And then we actually see at the end of this episode that Yusuke is able to defeat Hiei and get all the items back, as well as a sword that has an antidote to help so that Keiko does not become a yokai, and all that, by using his spirit gun. But we kind of see Yusuke's cleverness involved in here, where he shoots his spirit gun shot at the mirror, which was one of the spiritual items that's on the ground, and it ricochets off the mirror like light on a mirror, reflects, and hits Hiei in the back. So there's this whole moment where Hiei's like, ha, of course you missed. And then he gets hit in the back and he's eventually defeated. So anyway, that's kind of how it ends. It kind of shows that Yusuke is clever, even though he kind of plays a hard-headed, kind of dumb sort of main character. And they even call into that, where they're like, it seems like you're thinking all this great thought and strategy when really you didn't think about much at all, because Yusuke's explanation is that he just kind of winged it, thought that might work, and hopefully it did. Otherwise he was going to die, So that part was just kind of interesting and funny. But there's another part in this episode that was kind of funny about the relationship between Keiko and Yusuke, where Botan is now showing up as like a human that other humans are able to see, so that she can talk to and interact with Yusuke without him seeming like he's a psychopath in real life. But multiple times in this episode, Keiko basically walks in on Yusuke and Botan talking to each other, and like hanging out from her perspective. And so obviously that would not make her very happy. And so there's multiple times where Yusuke is like running away, like, no, I can explain everything. And I just thought that was kind of funny. So that being said, I thought these episodes were pretty good. I thought they they laid the groundwork for not only Yusuke's talent, and how hopefully with the rest of the series they'll show us that he's maybe, special or able to compete with these other spiritual entities, but also that, lays the breadcrumbs that will eventually lead to Kurama and Hiei joining the group. So now the next episodes have to do with this tournament with somebody that's going to replace this spiritual lady that's on Earth. And I'm sure that, involved in this will be some more training or some more things that we learn of like how to commit these spiritual sort of acts, whether it be more stuff with the ray gun or like punching somebody with spirit energy or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember. So we'll find out. But anyway, that was the next 4 episodes of Yu Yu Hakusho, and I will see you guys in the next one.